Hey, it's MiWilderness again. I'm going to go ahead and make some tallow out of deer fat. To make it, you can use beef or sheep or really any kind of hard fat. This is the hard fat, not the soft stuff. I'm just going to chop it up into little pieces about 1 inch in size, and then I'm going to put it through my grinder. By doing that, it makes it smaller and it allows you to render it into tallow quicker. This can be used for making soap or candles. It can be used to preserve wood. It has a lot of different uses. You don't have to cut and grind it up, but the smaller the pieces, the quicker it will render. And you could just throw this right in the pot with some water and make it, but I'm going to run it through the grinder and hopefully speed the process up. So I'm going to move on over to the grinder. Over at the grinder now. You don't have to grind this up, I'm just doing it to make the process go quicker, hopefully. This is the first time I've done this. Just going to take these pieces. This is actually the first time I've used this grinder too, so see how that goes. Wow, that thing works nice. I got this from my uncle. I think it's quite old. It's old Hamilton Beach. But the thing weighs like 10 or 15 pounds, so it must be fairly heavy duty. Let's go ahead and weigh this up. See how much fat we have. Looks like I got just over 1 3/4 pounds. So I'm going to go ahead and move over to the stove and start rendering this. Alright, we're going to get this going. There's my fat. I got about I think it was just over 1 3/4 pounds. I'm just weighing it to get an idea of how much tallow I can get out of a pound of fat. Now there's different ways you can do this, but the way I'm going to do it is just put the fat in there and put enough water in there just to cover it, and that way the fat won't burn. Another way you can do it is by using a double boiler, where you put a smaller pot inside a larger one that's filled with water and add your fat directly to the small pot. It doesn't have to be precise. The only reason you're putting the water in there is to keep it from burning, and so later you can put it in a refrigerator and the fat will separate from the water and rise to the top, and then you can pull the tallow off, and then you're done. The amount of time it took me to clean up my grinder, this is boiling. Once you get it boiling, you just want to reduce it to a simmer and let it just barely boil until all that fat is rendered out. And I've heard it takes anywhere from a half hour to 2 hours. I'm thinking since I ground it up, it'll probably be like a half hour. We'll see. You can use a potato masher or something to kind of squish those chunks. Alright, well, it looks like it's about done. I let it go for about an hour. Move it over to the sink. Which is what I'm going to do with you. Don't mind the dirty dishes. And we're just going to pour it through this colander into this aluminum container. Give it one last stir. That colander will strain out hopefully all the little bits of meat and gristle. I don't know if you can see that. All those little bits of meat and gristle that are left. Kind of looks like hamburger, really. Looks like well cooked hamburger. Don't let any of that go down your sink. It'll plug your sink up. You can just take something and gently squish that gristle to get whatever little fat's left in it out. I'm thinking that grinding it up is a really good way to go. And even if you don't have a grinder, you can still chop it up really small with your knife, and that'll probably speed the process along quite well. I let it go for an hour, but I think it was probably done after 20 minutes, maybe even 15 minutes really. But I just wanted to let it go for a good long time and make sure I could get almost all of that fat out of the chunks that I had. And now as that sits there, all the fat will rise to the top and the water will settle out to the bottom. Just take that as it is, let it get to room temperature there, and then put a lid on it, and or not, and stick it in the refrigerator overnight, and in the morning, or within like 24 hours anyway, it'll be a nice solid sheet on top, and you can peel that sheet off and then just rinse it off in cold water and you have tallow. Alright, so my tallow has been sitting in the refrigerator overnight, and now I'm going to see how it turned out. looks like it's hardened up good, and it's loose. I should be able to slide it right out of there. Oh yeah. There you go, nice big solid chunk of tallow. I just need to rinse this off with cold water. You can see when I strained it through that colander, it allowed some of those finer particles of grizzle and stuff to get in here. So I think what I'm going to do is heat this back up and then run it through a coffee filter to get all of those little particles of stuff out of there. But that's hard. I'm just going to sit it over here to dry off real good. Get it dried off real good, and then I can reheat it and then run it through a coffee filter into this mason jar, and then I'm just going to keep it in the refrigerator until I want to use it, and then I can just take this out and stick it in a thing of water and heat it up to liquefy it again for use. I'm going to go ahead and weigh this up and see how much tallow I ended up with. Make sure that's zeroed out. Looks like just under 1.5 pounds. I started out with, I think it was just over 1 3/4 pounds of raw fat, and I ended up with just under 1.5 pounds of pure tallow. I just broke it up in chunks, put an inch or so of water in this larger pan, and put the chunks of tallow in this smaller pan to melt them down. And they're melting down pretty quick. I'm going to let those get liquefied really well, and then I'll turn off the heat and let it cool down just slightly so I can run it through this coffee filter. So this time I'm just gonna let that heat up real good and get liquefied, and then let it cool down just slightly before I run it through this filter into this mason jar, and then I'll have a mason jar that's full of nice clean tallow from a deer. That's it, deer tallow. Talk to you later.